Welcome to the Ballpark Digest Broadcaster Chat. I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler, joined by Mick Gillispie and by Kevin Reichard. Mick, what's happening today?
Out on the porch today, enjoying a little bit of the loud trucks that are going by right in the most opportune moment. No, out here on the porch, just kind of sitting back and taking a look at the bay and hanging out and talking some baseball with you guys.
Oh, yes. Kevin, how are you?
I am good. We had a cold streak here in Wisconsin, so we had the windows open and on the air conditioner hasn't been running, so it's been a good time.
Right. Well, let's talk some baseball. Mick, in just getting things together, you said that there's so much to talk about. Where do you want to begin?
Well, I mean, I've been excited about watching the games, mostly Cubs games for me, and I've never had this opportunity as an adult to really just sit there and watch game after game after game because I work so many of them myself and the times conflict. But I've enjoyed just watching the games. I do miss the fans, but the level of play's been fun. We've got all these minor league rules that they've pushed to the major leagues this year, including the 7-inning doubleheader, which I'm not a fan of. The runner at second base in the 10th inning, I'm not a fan of, but people like these things. The DH in the National League, not a fan of it. I guess I'm just not a fan, right, of all this stuff. But it's things that we've seen in the minor leagues for a long time, and because of circumstances, now it's in the big leagues.
I'm thinking about movie metaphors with Major League Baseball doing what it can to constrict minor league baseball. We don't need these teams, and here are the things that we want to change. But oh, by the way, we're taking this and we're taking this and we're taking this. So forget about this with minor league baseball. Major League Baseball becoming what we know minor league baseball games to be like.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not anti getting rid of the DH. I really don't care. The 10th inning runner actually is pretty exciting. I've seen it twice now, and both times it has played out exactly like you, Jesse, have said it would. They're not bunting. They're playing for singles and doubles, and it's led to, pretty exciting endings. I don't know whether I want to see it continually happen, but this year, in a freak year like this, why not? It fits right in.
Yeah, and it's true, Mick, what you say. It's been difficult for me to share with friends and family that the more I work in baseball, the less I really understand about everything going on in Major League Baseball because we're just busy. But this is a different kind of year.
Yeah, and it's fun to watch the major leagues, and get to be a fan a little bit, and talk about the games and the players. And what's different about this year are players opting out. We saw Lorenzo Cain opt out for Milwaukee, and that's a big loss for them. I mean, he's a really good player. That does give someone else an opportunity to step up in that spot. But I'm curious to see, as this thing progresses, when teams fall out of contention, if more big name players don't just say, hey, I'm not doing this. I'm not out. I'm out of this. And I don't think that the Brewers are out of playoff contention. I mean, they just, he saw what was going on and decided that it wasn't a good idea to be around coronavirus. And that's I respect him for that. But in a team game, and you talk about one of the best players isn't going to be there. Now, what happens after that? Who follows suit? I mean, how about the whole fiasco with the Mets? Yoenis Cespedes, where'd he go? Like, they don't know what happened to him. And then magically he so happened to opt out, but he had left his hotel room and no one knew where he was. And he didn't notify management that he was going to opt out. And there he goes, and that whole thing was kind of funny too, but in a weird way. I mean, it's so easy to communicate these days, because of text and phones and all that kind of stuff. Surprised that he didn't do that, but just kind of that whole few days that went around that, it was really interesting.
Of course, it depends on who you ask about whether he notified the team or not. His agent said he notified the team. Players said they knew about it. Brody insists that, oh, I didn't know this was happening at all. It's so Mets. It is such
Right.
a situation.
Yeah. And that's true too. Maybe he just told somebody that they didn't get the word to the right person.
Yeah.
However it went down, like no one knew what was going on.
Well, that seems to sum up the Mets front office in a nutshell these days, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it summed up the Mets for a while. They've had different front offices for this.
And they're going to change again. You know, the ownership, they're still cashing through the ownership bids. And now it looks like Harris Blitzer is kind of in the lead. So, you know, this will be an interesting offseason for the Mets, no matter what happens this year. So,
Mick, I think that's a really interesting point that I had not considered. You and I both have been with teams where you can just point to guys who by the end of the year, they've shut it down.
Yes.
So they're making plans for the off season. And now this is a season where whenever a guy wants, he really can shut it down and take off.
Yeah. Yeah. And those are the teams I hate too. You know, and I'm in my career, there's been maybe a year or two like that where the teams quit. I've been around some teams that stink, but they play hard. But there was one year in particular where we had a lot of veterans, and those guys, the team wasn't good. A couple of guys thought they were going to be in the majors, were in AAA, and then they got sent back to AA. And it was toxic, you know, and the team wasn't even bad, really. They just didn't want to be there. And they lost, I want to say, 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 12 at the end of the season not to make the playoffs. They blew a 3-game lead. And I could just feel that this team, that they had no interest in playing any more baseball. And that's a shame. You know, that was a shame. And I think the manager has a lot to do with that in the minor leagues, because you got to convince these guys that it's going to help their career to play the game the right way. And also the front office, the major league front office, you know, whoever the farm director is, they've got to sense that too. And maybe put those guys somewhere else where they're not going to mess up a situation where this team could go to the playoffs and, you know, and get those guys extra games. But I get the feel sometimes with certain organizations, including the one that I'm with, where the minor league games feel more like rec games, you know, like we're kind of doing it in a way where we're not as worried about the outcome as we are just playing the games and playing them because they're on the schedule, you know. And that's a big change from when I first started, where, you know, Russ Nixon was my manager, and he's talking about respect the game, you know, respect the game. You run the first base because that's respecting the game, you know. You don't run up the score on the other team because that's respecting the game, you know. Like it was just this culture that the game had to be treated in a certain way. You had to play it a certain way, and that's just how it was. You know, if somebody got hit, you hit their guy, you know, like it just. And then now it's like the I feel like some of the minor league teams are more like, well, you know, if we can get out of here in 7 innings, let's do that. Or if we can get this season over faster, let's do that. Or this guy's pitched 3, you know, he pitched his 2 innings this week. Let's shut it down. You know, it used to be where you would come in, they would play those games and manage those games like they were big league games. And I thought that prepared those pitchers and those players for opportunities when they got to the major leagues, knowing that the most important thing that you do is win. And I've never understood this, and you guys can jump in on it too, so you tell me that winning is the most important thing in the big leagues, at least it's supposed to be, then why wouldn't it be important in the minor leagues? I mean, isn't that part of development?
Boy, that's a philosophical issue in and of itself. You know, I know you're absolutely right. I think there's organizations, I know there are, that don't stress winning at all, that they're so focused on individual player development, you know, via pitch counts, via days off, that they don't really worry. They don't care who wins and loses. I've never understood that personally, although I do understand the prospect of saving a pitcher's arm via pitch counts. I think that's very important as well. But in the end, you want your players to know how to win. And some organizations care about that up and down the line. You're totally right about that. But you know, in this day and age, minor league baseball is not viewed as a goal unto itself, and I'm sure you've seen this, Mick and Jesse both. It's a two-tier system. There's prospects and there's not prospects, and winning matters to everyone. Control and non-injury applies to the prospects.
The word that I've heard instead of prospect be used is priority.
Yeah.
Are you a priority? Are you not a priority?
An investment.
Yes.
Are you
With that said, so Mick, your organization, go down a couple of levels. Your guy, Buddy Bailey, was put in charge of the South Bend Cubs for the very first time. Oh, did the South Bend Cubs play well? Oh, did they play hard? They didn't have the best prospects in the league. They won the whole Midwest League all last year. They won the whole thing at the end. I think they went undefeated in the playoffs. So
they did.
It can be the manager at that spot and the coaches who set the atmosphere. And to that point of, does winning matter? Does winning not matter? I've seen front office brass say it's about development. And then the game starts that night, and they are the ones shouting the loudest at the umpire, and they are the ones who are the angriest when they lose. That
right.
There is that competitiveness that overrides that cool philosophy of, well, let's look at the whole overriding development rather than trying to win on a game-by-game basis. If you lose, that changes your mood.
Right. And ironically, Buddy managed the team I was talking about. And I think that, like, Buddy is a great manager. I mean, like, he knows the game as well as anyone I've ever been around. And he's old school. And he's an asset to the Cubs. But with that particular team, he just wasn't able to really get those veterans to buy in to playing the game, you know, the way that they should, you know. And I feel bad for him because, you know, he wants to win. I mean, like, that's his thing, you know, like and going to South Bend and going to the Midwest League was, I think, the perfect fit for him, because you get the players when they're young enough, coming out of college and high school, to still be, you can still mold them into understanding how important it is to play the game the right way. When you put guys, some managers, they're talking to the players about, well, you know, you get yours, you know, and most of those are former big league players that were fringe players, not the great players. Maybe they weren't even that good, but they look back and they wish they'd have gotten more money, and they wish they would have gotten more of this or more of that. You know, there's this little bit of like anger at the game from some of these guys. I think you know what I'm talking about, where it's like the game did something to them, and it's like, that's not how it works. You know, like for the rest of us, we look at it, look, your career is what it is, right? And if you got behind, if you played shortstop in the Orioles system back in the day, and Cal Ripken's a shortstop, and that's a tough break, right? But you weren't better than Cal Ripken, you know, and that's just the way that it works. It's a competition. But I just feel like if those guys get to the players first, then you're dealing with problems that you're going to deal with in the big leagues, where instead of worrying about winning, you're worrying about how much money you make, or, you know, who's washing your car, or, you know, where your family's sitting in the stands, like everything other than like going out and hitting a slider on a 2-2 pitch the other way and driving in a run or something, hustling and playing the game the right way. In that one particular team that I'm talking about, I can still see some of the veterans on that team, and how difficult it was to convince them that it was important to go out there and try to win those games, you know. And then I saw, like, and you know, I'd be frustrated too if I was kind of a veteran manager, because you put somebody's name in the lineup and, you know, you expect them to go out there and give 110%. But, you know, the thing I love about Buddy Bailey is that he took those kids last year. You know, he's not going to go in there and rah around. You know, he's not going to get in there and pat everybody on the back. He's an old school guy. He's tough, but he'll teach you how to win the game the right way. and you'll learn a lot about how to play the game of baseball being around Buddy, because he's seen so many games. I think, isn't he like the most active winning manager? You know, and you can do things in these minor league games within the parameters of development and what the organization sets out to win. And what I think the most important thing about that particular team, and then what they'll bring to the organization, is that they'll figure out that winning's fun.
There's the Casey Stengel line, right? Keep the 20 guys who are undecided away from the 5 guys who hate me. Sticking with South Bend real quick, that brings me to the topic of, we lost 2 very important people with regard to baseball. So we lost Joe Kernan, recently passed away, the mayor of South Bend, and Kevin, you can speak more on this, the man who kept the South Bend, currently the Cubs, in South Bend. They were the South Bend Silverhawks. The other one that we lost recently was Lou Schweckheimer. So first, Kevin, your thoughts on the passing of Joe Kernan?
Well, Joe Kernan saved baseball in South Bend. That team was up for sale. It was, I believe, already in some of the advanced negotiations to be moved. And Joe stepped in, bought the team, put it, right-sized it, and then sold it. Probably didn't make a whole lot of money in the process because he took over a very distressed asset. The Silverhawks, remember the Silverhawks had a gold logo, which I never could understand.
So the Studebaker Silverhawk was built in South Bend. And so it was the hood ornament of the Studebaker Silverhawk was what was on the front of their cap.
Yeah.
Did not know that. I didn't know that.
It should have been made silver, though. When you have to explain a logo, it doesn't work.
No.
First rule of marketing. But he stepped in and saved the team. South Bend, I think a lot of people in minor league baseball would not have minded to see the team move. I think a lot of people wrote off South Bend as a bad market because Notre Dame is going to eat up 99% of the oxygen in the atmosphere. But he brought the team back. It surged, and then under Andrew Berlin, the new owner, it's done exceptionally well. Part of that's the Cubs marketing, to be totally honest, and part of it is Berlin and GM Joe Hart really have struck a chord with their community support. Joe's a tireless advocate for the team. Andrew has stepped in and spent money where it needs to be spent on a great operation. So it's one of those cases where the what if would have been interesting, but what really happened is a great story for both South Bend and minor league baseball.
And then,
they're a great market. They're I don't really say this, just being around the Cubs. Yes. I mean, like, every time you see them and the different things that they do, it's always top notch. You know, I mean, like they're a very respectable organization. You know, Joe Hart and all those guys over there, Andrew Berlin, you said it. I mean, that's turned out to be just a perfect fit for the Cubs too. And the facilities, I mean, they say the facilities as nice as it comes.
It's been improved a lot. Let's put it that way.
Okay. When I first entered the Midwest League in 2009, the year before me, in 2008, the broadcaster, my predecessor with the Lugnuts, had all of his equipment stolen right from the broadcast booth. It was seen as a ballpark that you did not want to go to. And wow. The lots that were around, the whole stadium setup, this was seen as one of the worst locales in the Midwest League's Eastern Division. And you fast forward to right now, and that is a gem. It is just outstanding. And the crowds are great, and the energy is great, and it's wonderful to watch baseball there.
Jesse, if your broadcast equipment gets stolen, how do you broadcast the game?
So what he did was, Brad Tillery was the name of my predecessor, he contacted the local radio station and he asked to borrow equipment.
That's the way to do it. Yeah, check out Ballpark Digest, check out the archives and search for South Bend, because we've run a lot on the ballpark improvements between the conversion of the next door, what was it, synagogue, into the team store, and the installation of outfield apartments, which you know well, Jess. That whole area is so unlike even what it was 5 years ago, much less when Jesse first joined the Midwest League. A lot of investment, and Andrew's been good for the Cubs as well. You know, he's a White Sox boy. changed allegiances, and now he actually owns a small percentage of the Chicago Cubs as well. So nice little get by the Ricketts family.
Yeah.
All right, Kevin, how about the passing of Lou Schweckheimer?
Oh, that was so sad. I've known Loon since his Pawtucket days. I'd hear from him all the time. He was such an enthusiast for the sport, such an enthusiast for ballparks. He finally got his new ballpark in Wichita and then passed away fairly quickly from COVID-19 complications. I mean, he wasn't old. He was only 62. And it was so tragic because he left a whole bunch of admirers in minor league baseball, people that he had reached out to that knew him, that pulled for him to get a new ballpark in Wichita. And the reaction in the sport was just, universal sadness, because he was a lifer. He had done his time in some pretty crappy circumstances and really turned things around, had a lot of ideas, and it's a shame he passed away way too soon.
Some other news that came out from this past week, no Field of Dreams game.
Yeah, well, COVID, St. Louis Cardinals. I think this game was on life support even before the Cardinals' COVID issues, because Major League Baseball is finding out off days are a prized commodity, and a trip to Dyersville would have required one off day. It was scheduled for a Thursday, and then the following day was going to be an off day. And so I think it's a tremendous idea. I love the site. I love the idea. And ballpark ain't going anywhere. So might as well do the simplest thing possible and bring it back next year.
Before I get to the Baseball Thesaurus term of the day, which, Joe Kelly, this is going to be for you. Quick question for each of you. So I'm the statistician of the Lemonade League in Lansing, Michigan. Because I'm the statistician, because it's all in my Microsoft Excel document, I get to choose what stats I want to keep, what stats I don't want to keep. So for the two of you, and Mick, let's begin with you. Which stats would you say, I'm not keeping track of this?
I mean, look, if I'm in a Lemonade League, the Smokies had their high school league, the Tennessee High School League wrapped up. I'm going to keep the basic stuff, right? Like just batting average, RBIs, home runs, doubles, triples, stolen bases. When you get past all that other stuff, walks and strikeouts, like the stuff that's on a baseball card, that's as far as I'm going. And honestly, if I figure that that's too hard to do, anything that I can keep right off of my scorebook, right, then I'm not going to do it. What I've learned over life in those type of leagues is do what you can do well and just try to do that well. If you try to do everything and then the things that are important, they start getting worse and everything's bad and then no one even cares, right? So it's like, what are the things that if this guy comes up or, in 2 years, they might look back and go, this Lemonade League, what did that guy hit? No one's going, what was the guy's whip that pitched, for the Lemonade League, but they might look at batting average or ERA, and stuff like that. So I'm keeping basic stats.
Kevin, how about you?
I'm not even sure how much the stats matter whatsoever. I guess it all depends if how much you feel you have to inform the coaches about what's going on. Like a John Anderson the only stat he cares about is how many innings his pitchers pitch. Minnesota Gophers baseball coach. That's all he cares about. You look at other coaches; they may care a lot. So I don't want to say they're meaningless because they can be. And in many ways, all you need is batting average and home runs for a hitter. That's all people really care about. When Pete Alonso was MVP in the Northwoods League, it was all about home runs. That's really about it. He had 18 home runs in a summer collegiate season, which is like pretty monster. He's still hitting a few home runs. Yeah, he's still hitting a few. 18 in the Northwoods League. That's quite a few, and he had 53 RBI as well. Other guys barely made a blip in summer collegiate, and then ended up being stars. So I'm not necessarily sure it's a great predictor of outcome in the professionals, but I think you can drop WAR and held saves even in the Lemonade League, and maybe make up one of your own. That's just totally unique, Jesse.
If there's a guy that could do it, it'd be you, Jesse.
Oh, thank you very much. I'll take it. All right. So, Baseball Thesaurus, your term. And I happened to grab a second edition when I was grabbing for a book today. Have you ever heard of the term the Kentucky Wonder? What does a Kentucky Wonder mean?
No.
It sounds like it's something that you mix. It's got to have bourbon in it. Maybe, maybe like a cherry. And I would say like, let me think here. Besides crushed ice. No, I'm just kidding. Doesn't sound like a drink. I'll take, for the whole crew, Kentucky bourbon for all of us. What'd you say? Kentucky
Wonder. And
Kentucky Wonder for all of us. We don't know what's in it. It's just bourbon and something.
My mind went to the Louisville Slugger. I'm sorry. I didn't even think of a cocktail in that situation. I just thought of a player who became known because he was using a Louisville Slugger bat.
The answer is, and I have not found out yet the reason why this is the case. Maybe it comes from some pitcher in Kentucky. A Kentucky Wonder is a brushback pitch. Kentucky Wonder is what Joe Kelly threw at Alex Bregman, or what Joe Kelly threw at Carlos Correa. The Kentucky Wonder is a duster. It's a purpose pitch. It is a pitch thrown by a pitcher up and in on a batter.
Right. And the wonder is, did he do it on purpose or did it just get away?
Makes you wonder.
On purpose.
Yeah, right. You just don't know, but maybe.
I hope he did it on purpose.
You wonder.
It slipped. It slipped.
It slipped. But so far, he's had the longest suspension in baseball this year. And it was funny, and I don't know whether either you saw the TV coverage of it. The bench is cleared. You know, those two teams do not like each other. So I'm hoping it was on purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, the wonder to me is, how did he get 8 games and the team that cheated to win the World Series got 0? That's the Mick wonder about that whole situation. I don't know if Joe Kelly was throwing at those guys or not, but baseball definitely sent a message that they're not going to tolerate that, and I think that, maybe like a 2-game suspension probably would have been better.
And I'll say in his defense, wasn't he the player who in a TikTok video or something, preseason before training camp, was throwing in his backyard and totally missed the huge backstop and cracked a window in his own house?
Yes.
There's a conspiracy theory that Joe Kelly did that in order to establish, when it came time to face the Astros, these things happen.
Oh, life's never that planned out. I wish it were, but it never is.
Okay, so on the subject of brushback pitches and purpose pitches in general, they have a very long history in the annals of baseball.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the history of the game, when it was a lot rougher sport, I mean, things are fairly genteel now. You had the pitchers, the legendary Barber. You had these pitchers known for pitching inside. Part of that was the culture of the game, where National League and American League didn't play. You stuck with your own team for a long time, and everyone else was the enemy because everyone else was trying to steal your job. So right. Pushback pitches were purpose pitches, were just heck with you guys. I'm going to take you off the plate so I can pitch inside.
Yeah, Nolan Ryan's the best I ever saw in person at it. I saw Nolan Ryan pitch a few times in my life, and it always seemed like they'd be on him a little bit early in the game, and then here comes that chin music, that Kentucky Wonder, if you will, and then all of a sudden it would be like he'd roll off like 12 or 15 in a row without giving up a hit or having a base runner. He'd strike out a bunch of guys. So it's kind of funny how that that played into his game. And there were other players, other big intimidating guys like Randy Johnson that used it too, very effectively.
Ryan Borucki is now up in the major leagues with the Blue Jays. And I remember when he was a lug nut, he hit a guy and happened to just talk with him about it afterward. And he said, so the first time that the guy came up, he had a base hit. Guy looked way too comfortable. It was too comfortable of a swing. When I was reading my baseball anecdotes books growing up and all those different books about baseball one-liners, those books are full of those kind of things. About the batter who's getting a toe hold and he's digging in and the pitcher shouts at him, you better keep digging because I'm going to bury you. Yeah. All those different things. It's just the culture of baseball, of the pitcher who hates that the batter is trying to get comfortable.
Yeah. I can see that guy too, like digging the back foot in,
Yes.
Holding his arm out like that, like stepping back, like taking a couple practice swings, getting those feet ready. And it used to be like you knew it was coming. It's not like that anymore. Those guys get in there and they're doing that because they want to hear their walk-up song a little bit longer, which is crazy. That's just the way that, it is sometimes.
Can you imagine one of those old-time pitchers facing a player from today in an era where everyone crowds the plate?
Yeah.
It wouldn't take a whole lot to be a blowback pitcher in this era because everyone is right up on the plate.
Well, when you throw in, that is now in the minor leagues that I've seen, a breaking of an unwritten rule that my team has shouted out angrily from the dugout at another team because we don't like that they throw inside. And these guys are throwing inside way too much. And
yeah.
What are we doing here?
You're telling a pitcher he can't have half the plate.
Exactly.
Yep.
The changing of culture.
Oh, yeah. Something I wanted to bring up, guys. I started my career, and I've been writing about this in my book, and I'm trying to write here, with the Wilson Tobbs of the Coastal Plain League. And so I've been keeping up with the Tobbs, play at Fleming Stadium in Wilson, North Carolina. And they sent out a message this week that their season was canceled right in the middle of the season due to COVID. So I hate it for those guys. They were off to a very good start this year. And I was just hoping that they would get that thing finished up. I hate that for them.
Yeah, Wilson was one of the teams that decided to play this year in the Coastal Plain. Many teams didn't. I'm a little surprised they're the only team that actually didn't make it to the end. I thought you would see more COVID issues, which we've seen in other sports as well, pretty prevalent. But that's a sad thing. Wilson's a great baseball town. I bet you had a great time there.
Yeah, learned a lot there. $500 a month. I've talked about this before. I got to eat the extra concession stand food. We did sales in the morning before the season started. We did sales in the morning, and then we would turn the stadium lights on, Chris Allen and I, and we would hang all the fence signs. We built the beer garden that's still out there. Really, Chris built it, but I was there for it. He's got a contractor's license, or at least he did, and he was really good at putting things together. And we had this old refrigerator truck. Yep. And then that built into the beer thing. He worked really hard to get money from the some of the city councils to put a playground in the stadium. So that was pretty cool too. I just really enjoyed my time there. I got to go on the radio and people actually listened to the games. And the term that I use, Jesse, maybe for one of your books one day you can put it in there, the business end. It came from a guy who was my broadcast partner. He was like a former Barton College player, and Barton College is there in town. And I'm trying to figure out what his first name was. We figured out his last name was Scott. That just gives you an idea how long I've been doing this. I can't even remember my partner's names. But anyway, he said his coach used to say that. That was a maybe a Barton College or his high school coach would tell those guys the 8th inning and the 9th inning or the business end. And so he would say it. And so ever since then, I've just said it every night, like, hey, we're going to the business end of the game. And I believe in that business end, which is one of the reasons that I don't think a 7-inning baseball game does the game justice. because you get into that 8th and 9th innings, and the guys who can make plays in those innings are the best players to have on your team. The Javi Baez's of the world, where you know that you get into those innings, he's either going to do something with his glove or he's going to do something with his bat. Eddie Murray was a guy who was a great business end player, back in the day. I always thought Andre Dawson was a great business end player. But I learned that there. And then the other thing that happened to me in Wilson is when I got to Wilson, I was Mike Gillispie. And I show up, and they've got 2 full-time people there. It's not a big staff. And they're like, well, the guy that was here before was named Mike, and this guy over here that's the mascot and the handyman's name's Mike, and we got to give you a nickname. And so I say, well, all right. And they're going to call me Gilly or Dizzy, which are the 2 nicknames. But in my fraternity, they called me Mick. And so I said, how about just Mick, And then to this day, everybody calls me Mick. It started there in Wilson. And it's been so long now, it's just crazy to think, when something like that happens, that that your name could change that fast. So I guess that's how nicknames start, right? And then to catch fire. So I love Wilson. And when I read that this week, I really felt bad for everyone that put all those hours in, the guys that were playing in the season and having a good year. And, I just hate it for them. And I know all the hard work that goes into these seasons too, like the sales and the hanging the fence signs. I worked in the concession stands and made hot dogs and sold them. Was in the ticket booth out there, it was like Scooby-Doo, like we did it all, I just wore like a beard when I was in one place, or a crazy hat. I'd go upstairs and I would do the broadcast. But it was that season that really helped teach me the importance of everyone's job at the stadium. And I don't know if I'll run into people that just did broadcasting and never did that and don't understand or appreciate the people that they work with and what their jobs are. So I couldn't have had a better experience than I did in Wilson.
You're not a true lifer in baseball until you pulled tarp, right? Isn't that?
Yeah, I didn't do. The funny thing is, I don't remember pulling the tarp much in Wilson, but when I was in the rest of my jobs, like up until I don't know, until I became established in Tennessee, when I was in Salem, I pulled tarp. And then when I was in Chattanooga, a big part of my job was pulling tarp. I was the assistant radio guy next to the legendary Larry Ward. And we would be, I'd be in the middle of talking about something, and there'd be a crack of lightning off, and maybe a couple drops of rain. And I'd be like, all right, well, here's Larry. And I'd, haul butt down these stairs. They're at AT&T Field. They're real steep metal stairs, and the elevator takes forever, and you're 4 stories up, and you gotta, you're going like this down there to try to get there, because you don't want to not be there, because that in the minor leagues, there's no use for a second radio guy if he can't pull tarp, So you get down there, and a couple times the storms were pretty rough. And you're dressed up nice because you want to look good in the press box, and then you come back and your shoes are, your brown shoes are a mess, and but there's a camaraderie with pulling the tarp with the staff. If you're a dedicated tarp puller, then the rest of the staff appreciates you.
Mick, I'm still stuck on the Scooby-Doo reference. I'm picturing the gang huddling around you and going, let's see who this bearded guy is at the concession stands. It's Mick the broadcaster.
It is. There he is again. He's over there doing tickets. That's the way those jobs are. I went to Tennessee a couple weeks ago, and they had the high school baseball tournament. Well, they furloughed most of the staff, so they just have the upper management people are there, and they're all doing concessions and press box jobs and stuff, because they, there's just not the money for that league to have, all these different people, and they have to do it. And it reminded me, I was talking to Chris about it, of those days in Salem.
And on that
Or
note,
Wilson, and Wilson, and Salem too, but Wilson mostly.
Kevin, any final thoughts this week?
I've never pulled tarp, so I'm the last guy to ask about that rite of passage for working in baseball.
Would you ever want to pull tarp?
If I were asked, I probably would. Maybe, depending, I guess. Probably not.
One of the worst things about tarp is not, the tarp pull itself. What do you do with your tarp shoes afterward? Because they can smell. And some people like to go barefoot. Some people, there's so many different shoe options that people have chosen over the years that I have seen. And one of the biggest keys is you've got to have traction. Whatever you do, it can't be something that you'll just be slipping and sliding around.
Hey, look, and when you're the broadcaster of the team, there's always some jerk that has a problem with you missing some tarp pulls because we have other stuff going on, like that is something that you deal with on a regular basis. And I don't really do tarp pulls anymore. I mean, I would, but like I'm normally in the press box and it's just where I am right now. That's not something that they need me to do. I try to jump down and do it every once in a while. But the other part is like they put this stuff, this dry, the quick dry on the field, and it goes over top of the normal dirt. It's like little pebbles, and that stuff gets caught in your shoes and stuff. You can't get it off of there. And like everybody's always got some. Well, not so everybody, but somebody's always going to say you're not pushing hard enough on the roll. And then the other thing is like, you better hope you have a good groundskeeper because they're the ones that organize how the folds are going to be made. We had a groundskeeper a couple years ago that didn't know how to roll a tarp. And so look at the beginning of the season, I think, thank goodness I wasn't there for that. But word was like, it was that you just look out there and the tarp would be off the roller wrong and stuff. And so, that was interesting, but the guy now is great. Eric Taylor, he's one of the best. So a lot of things go into a tarp pull, but I'll tell you this, Kevin, you should do it one time just to be able to say you did it.
I'll keep that in mind when I'm traveling ballparks next year and volunteering at some point and having someone video it just for you.
Thank you.
Know when to keep it low, know when to keep it high.
Yes.
I'm just worried about falling down and being trapped under the tarp, quite honestly.
The wind. There's always going to be wind. So the question is, when do you want the wind beneath it, and when do you not want the wind beneath it?
Right. You want the wind beneath it when you're trying to just get the tarp up to pull it, right? But if the wind's really blowing and you get the wind under it, it'll take the tarp and you can't get it.
It'll dislocate your shoulder.
Yep. What you guys should do is check out Tarp Nami, the YouTube video that the Smokies put out from this horrific tarp pull that happened, years ago. The tarp got ripped in half.
Yeah.
And it's really funny how they put the whole video together. It's fantastic. So check it out. Tarp Nami on YouTube.
I mean, the Burlington Bees twice in the same summer, might have been twice within the same week. It was pretty close. Their tarp got whipped up into the air and sent through their netting.
Ouch. Oh my goodness.
No good.
Everybody's got tarp stories. So my brother has also said that he wants to do a tarp pull at some point. Oh, tarp pulls. Tarp pulls are something else. Mick and I can keep talking.
I'd take one right now, though, Jesse. The world that I'm in right now, I would take a tarp pull. Give it to me. Yeah. If it meant we were back at work calling games and doing our thing, give me a tarp pull.
Yeah. Hey, for somebody watching us right now, share with us. Write to Kevin Reichard directly. Let him know your favorite tarp pull memory. Because if you're watching this and you work in baseball, you got a tarp pull memory.
Sounds great.
Hey, for right now, let's close up this book. Let's close up this shop. Mick Gillispie, thank you very much.
Hey, it was great talking to you guys this week. Be safe and healthy, and let's get together next Tuesday.
Kevin Reichard, thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. This is This is the highlight of my week by far.
I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler. This has been the Ballpark Digest Broadcaster Chat.